Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for this day. Pray that you will bless our time together as we talk about some of the things that are going on in the world that touch on Bible prophecy and indicating what we believe here are indicative of the times in which we live. So pray, bless our time together. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, today, let me do a little introduction. First, I'm titling this World with No Flaps. Now, those of you who follow me on Facebook will probably understand what that is, and then I'll add in a little bit of a little graphic, and I'll explain that in a moment, because one of the things we talk around here is the convergence of all of these things of the end time happening. And so this is somebody made up. It's a musical score, and I think of things sometimes in Bible prophecy, you have all these different layers, like parts in an orchestra. And so I've been trying to figure out how to depict a three-dimensional score because, you know, when you think of a guy like Beethoven who wrote these incredible symphonies and he was totally deaf, how does somebody do that? How does God give the ability to someone to be able to do that? It's a miracle. And it makes and having a great niece who's deaf, I don't understand how it happens. But so the other thing we talked too is about acceleration. Things are happening more and more quickly, convergence, logistics, things being put in place that are indicative of us living in the end times. And then of course, we talk every week about it, this understanding, and we get that out of Daniel chapter 12. It's also in Daniel chapter 11 about the people who will understand in the end times are those who are going to and fro, back and forth through the book. And it says that the wise will understand and instruct many. That's what it says in Daniel 11. It says, but the wicked, none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And I think in the world that we live in, with some of the things that we see happening with the agendas on the sexual side and culture, that type of thing, it's indicative of people have lost their understanding. So we believe that Romans chapter 1 is both has a practical and a prophetic aspect to it. And it says that God gives them over to a reprobate mind. And the meaning of that really is that they lose the ability to reason. And so my question is, do you see people running around today, not running around, running things today that have lost the ability to reason? It's insanity. That's a prophetic thing, but it's also indicative of the fact that God's pouring out his judgment on the world. You want to oppose God? You want to oppose the things of God? God's going to remove your mind from you. Remember what he did to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, he thought he was it, man. I am it. I am like a God king. And he was warned, you're going to lose your mind. You're going to live like an animal. And he did for 7 years. And he came back, he repented of it, and he came back with great vigor about God. So let me just say a little bit about my title. Why would I say World with No Flaps? So last night, I was on my way back from Israel. I had a fantastic trip. I went to the Christian Media Summit in Israel. I told Pam that if you had taken like one panel or one visit or one part of a visit or one discussion or one meeting, and that was all that happened, the whole trip was worth it. And there was a string of those all day long, every day, all week long, and places to visit, biblical sites, meeting incredible people, and I'll talk about some of that today. So I'm going to apologize, though. It's a little bit, I'm a little bit disorganized. I feel punchy, like I've been in a fight. So I got up at about 5:30 a.m. in Jerusalem on Friday morning, which would be, that's 7 hours ahead, so it would have been 10:30 p.m. here on Thursday night. Had breakfast. Brian Schrager picked me up. We went down to where he lives, down near Bethlehem and Beit Jala. We were going to Shabbat dinner at some friends, new friends that I have. I hope they're still friends, even based on what I said at dinner. But I don't think I said anything too bad. It was an incredible experience, by the way, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we decided to take them a gift, so we picked up some things at the store to take to them. And then we went to Hebron, as a lot of people say. It's Hebron, or Hebron, how you want to say it. It's like one of these things. It seems like everything in Israel has like 3 pronunciations, and whichever one you say, well, we really say this. So we went to the Tomb of Machpelah. We went to the ancient Tell. Then Brian and I drove up through Hebron, and as we went to Mamre, which is another archaeological site. Brian and I posted some pictures on our Facebook pages about it if you want to go look at those. Very important site. And I'll try to remember to talk about that in a few minutes. And then we went to Shabbat with some dinner at their home with some friends. And it was a wonderful evening. So Brian then took me to the airport. So my flight left at 12:30 a.m. Saturday morning, Israel time, which would be 5:30 p.m. So by the time we leave, I'm approaching 24 hours being up. And then we came back. Everything was great. Got in early to Boston. In fact, we got in so early at Boston, we had to sit on the plane for 20 minutes because Customs and Immigrations didn't open until 5:30 a.m. So I did that, and I have a 9-hour layover in Boston. It's the only way at Delta. But I went to the Delta Sky Club, and I was able to get in for no cost. They had wonderful food, fruits, vegetables. Finally brought out the iced tea at 10:30, and I was happy. You can't really get iced tea in Israel. It's the same way with the UK. Why would you put ice in tea? And I'm like, why would you not? And or you get like a Coke Zero, and could I have some ice? And they'll bring you a glass with these 3 little tiny ice cubes in it that disappear as soon as you pour, an ounce into it. But I survived all those terrible sufferings that I went through on this trip. So we took off on time for Boston on a commuter jet coming home that left at 2:30. We're approaching Port Columbus. Now, I've flown in and out of there. I'd say it's easy to say I've landed there hundreds of times, if not more. And I know and even though I haven't flown into Columbus for 3 years because of the whole pandemic thing, I know what it feels like. I know what it's supposed to feel like. And I know about where you're going to hear feel the landing gear go down and feel that little jump in the plane when it does that. But we were coming in, and I'm telling you, it was way too fast. So we still had internet. And so I have a speedometer app on my phone. Now, my wife would say, why don't you use it? But, and no, I don't think you can download it for your version of the phone there, Pam. I don't think it's available for your phone, because she can sit over there, and check, where she can't see the speedometer. But, and it said 335. Now, I know that the landing speed of that plane is about 130, 135. That's what it's supposed to be going at touchdown. It depends on the weight. But the plane was full. I think there was one empty seat. It was right in front of me. And there was a lady sitting there with a 4-month-old baby in the window seat. And sitting next to me was a guy who got on. He was all dressed. He had Delta pilot hat and all this stuff. So I said, are you a pilot? And he said, yeah, for Delta. I said, what do you fly? Airbus 330s. And I'm pretty sure that's the type of plane. That's the big sort of wide body plane. That's what I flew in on from Tel Aviv to Boston. And it was funny because as they're coming in from Tel Aviv to Boston, they have these wonderful, incredible graphics on the screen now. So I had nobody sitting beside me. And so I was I had the graphics of the radar and the what it looks like for the pilot's screen and that type of thing. And I was thinking this is, air travel is incredible because it's so safe. I mean, You fly 5,553 miles or whatever it is from Tel Aviv to Boston, and they have two engines, and you never hear of anything. You very rarely ever hear of anything going wrong. Well, that's not always true. So we're coming in and we're doing about 200 miles an hour more than what we should. And you really can't see the ground because there was very overcast yesterday, very low ceiling. And so you're sort of like in this gray soup. And then the plane, you could feel the plane lift up and make some turns, and we're flying around making these turns, like doing these loops and all this stuff. And then the pilot comes on and says, folks, the flaps aren't working. And the flaps are what help slow the plane down. So I think part of the reason they were flying around was to get slowed down, get rid of some fuel and that type of thing. And then we finally says, you need to prepare for an emergency landing. We're going to get the emergency equipment out. You'll see fire trucks on the runway. They're going to be following us down the runway when we land. Then listen to the flight attendant. She does, the whole thing with the lights on the floor and exits and what you need to do. Leave your carry-ons. Do not try to get your carry-ons. And so you think, what do I do? So they have text messaging on planes now. So I wrote to I didn't know what to tell her. She's at home waiting for me to tell her it's okay to come get me. And I just said, I love you, please pray. So she knows, like, okay, something is really wrong. Because that's not usually what I text her. It's usually like, come get me, I'm ready, or something like that. So, or where are you? I'm waiting. And so I then had time to sort of compose a text to her, and, so she passed it around, and I appreciate all you people praying. So I can say that I stand here today as proof that for some of you, God answered your prayers. For others of you, he didn't, because I'm here. And so on the next go around, this is just before the landing gear went down. We were doing 234. So we're still, and it went down in the 200 to 210 range when we touched down. So it was, he stood on it. It got safe, but you could smell the brakes were pretty hot. Then they sent the fire crew out to look at the brakes. And so we had to sit on the runway while they did that. And then, of course, they'd closed both runways, the other runway down, because they didn't know if we were going to crash, if we would stop by the end of the runway, or the plane would burst into flame, the brakes would burst into flame. So they shut down the other runway, and then they reopened it, but now they have a backlog. But that runway is between us and the terminal, so now we got to sit out on the tarmac for about an hour while the other planes are coming in. So what I thought was going to be getting in 25 minutes early ended up being about an hour and a half late, because I think we're out there about 2 hours. So, but everything worked out. But the point of all this is, as I thought it was a good example of the way Bible prophecy is, there have always been restraints, restrictions, flaps, if you will, that God has put in place. But it does talk about that in the end times, God's going to pull back that restraint. And there's a big argument in Bible prophecy about who is the restrainer in 2 Thessalonians 2. A lot of people think it's the Holy Spirit. And I will confess to you, I'm not there 100% with that. Because I think it's sort of like a lot of these Bible prophecies. We have an idea of how they're all going to work out. But then we have to deal with this thing called reality. And so we've talked ad nauseum about this over the years here at Fellowship Bible Chapel. And so my question, that I think this is a legitimate question to ask. In today's world, with what we see going on, exactly what is being restrained? Okay. Now, the response to that is, well, the only thing that's being restrained is the identity of the Antichrist. Okay. I'm not sure. It's just right now it's not working with me, and I'm struggling with the text. And it's okay to do that, by the way. I'm struggling with that conclusion. And it's and if that's your conclusion, I'm fine with that. Let's see how it works out. Because the best indicator of how Bible prophecy unfolds is how it unfolded. And we've talked about that, the birth of the Messiah that we celebrate in our culture around this time. A lot of people missed it because it wasn't quite what they were expecting. So maybe that's a lesson for us that maybe this isn't going to work out exactly the way that we think. Listen, I know Jesus is coming back. I know he's coming back in judgment. I know he's going to pour out his wrath, and he's going to set up a kingdom. And he's going to rule and reign from Jerusalem. And so that's why, to me, Israel is like really important. And I love Israel. This was such an incredible trip. As I said, everything was just, it just was incredible. So so now with the lack of sleep and everything, I'm having a bit of, I'm just all over the place with what I want to say today. So let's look at some of the things going on. Now, I'm not going to put any slides up for this. So I'm going to go to a blank slide so you don't have to look at my graphic anymore. By the way, on the trip over, Brian Schrager, who you know, he's been here, said he would come up and pick me up. And he said, I'll be there at 3:00. My flight was supposed to land at 2:50. We landed at 2:25, and I was off the plane, you have to walk a very long way. If some of you have been to Ben Gurion, you know it's a very long hallway. And you get to customs. I got to customs. There was nobody in line. There was a booth open. I walked right up to it. I think he yelled at me for not scanning my passport upstairs. I said, do I need to go back up? And no, I'll take, and then I'm thinking like, well, why bother anyway? Because you can get by with it, right? So he gives me my ticket. I walk up to baggage claim. I stand there for 20 seconds and here comes my bag. I get my bag and Brian's like, I'm just pulling into the parking. So 25 minutes from pulling up to the gate, I'm out walking to the parking garage with Brian. And then it takes of course, Sunday is a work day in Israel. This was Sunday afternoon. And Jerusalem traffic is a unique nightmare. And it took us about 2 hours to get to the hotel. So, but everything worked out. But I would say that part of the trip, the leg to Boston to Tel Aviv, was one of the smoothest trips I've ever had. And I've flown thousands of times. And I've had, believe me, travel nightmares, a string of them like you won't believe. I even won the ABA Journal, selected one of my stories, as the worst travel horror story of all time. Put it in the ABA Journal, but I won't go into that now. But everything had gone so smoothly, and then it changed. So every day, every session of this conference was just something that was unique, relevant, and really incredible. Even the first night at the opening session, they had an ABBA cover band come in. I know this is weird. A Christian Media Summit in Israel with an ABBA cover band. They're singing ABBA songs. And they were really good, except there were no blondes. But they were really, really good. You can go to the government press office if you want to watch the opening gala. they were excellent. And then they had some people come, and there was some talk that Prime Minister Netanyahu was going to come, but he didn't make it. He's in the midst of forming a government. And then we'd have meetings all day, sometimes at night. And then Wednesday night after it was over, this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about Russia-Ukraine. I have to be careful. I ran into people at the conference. They had people from 50 countries, about 120 Christian journalists. Did you know I'm a journalist or considered one? But and they had all these people in. So like, I was talking to somebody from England. And he says, "Oh, Dr. Mordecai Kadar." I was talking to him. And I was like, "What? Mordecai Kadar was there?" I love Dr. Mordecai Kadar. Get online, follow him. He really, I think, he understands Arabic. He understands Islamic culture, maybe as well as anybody in Israel. And he's come out with his idea of a peace proposal that the Palestinian society is very tribal, so they need to do something almost like the United Arab Emirates to get them to govern themselves. And this is what's going on in Israel right now, is you're seeing clashes between clans, Palestinian clans. And what some of them are doing is they're positioning themselves so that when a boss dies, like 86, 87 now, his 4-year term expired in 2006, I believe, or 2007, and he's still leading this thing. So, as we say around here, he's in the 18th year of his 4-year term. And people don't like him. So he's from up north in the Galilee area. I think he's from up around Nazareth. And people in the south around Hebron, they're in a different clan, and they fight. And so what you're seeing now is you're seeing some of these groups, jihadi groups and whatnot, forming to attack Israel severely to make themselves elevated in the minds of all the other people, so they'll be the top dog when a boss moves on to his just reward that he deserves. He is an anti-Semitic. He hates Jews. His doctoral thesis in university was about, I think, denying the Holocaust. And by the way, denying the Holocaust in Israel is a very, very big deal. And so here we have this Palestinian guy who's leading this, we're supposed to make peace with, who won't even acknowledge what happened. And this is... So let me slide off here. I'm going to kind of jump around today. President Trump has lost a lot of respect in Israel. Let's be honest about this. He needs to address the dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, and he needs to apologize, and he needs to do it now. And huge supporters in the Zionist community of Israel who love President Trump and what he did, relocating the embassy and that sort of thing, the Abraham Accords, their reaction to what happened is, I feel like I got punched in the gut when he did that. And I don't think he said anything about it. I've been away from the news for a few days. I know he made a speech, but I don't think he mentioned it. And it needs to be addressed, because I'm telling you, the people I talk to, conservative, political, Zionist, settler people in Israel, to a person said, "Hey, to me, when the subject came up, do you like Ron DeSantis? Because we're done with Trump." And that's not good. So now I'm sure I'm going to get some hate mail on that. And I'll tell you what, send it to me. Send it to corrections at FB Chapel. I don't know if we even have an email address, but it'll disappear. Because I know this subject and I talk to a lot of people about it. What Kanye West says is anti-Semitic. Follow a guy named, what's his name? Dusami Washington, I think is the name. He wrote The Black Church and Zionism. He wrote a book. He was with Kufi, Christians United for Israel, Haggie's group. He's superb on it. And I think I mentioned he did an interview with Caroline Glick a couple weeks ago that I would highly recommend on her podcast at JNS, the JNS channel on YouTube. or her podcast. You can find it. It's out there in a bunch of different places. But listen to it and follow this guy on Twitter because he's a bright guy. Dusami Washington, I think is his name. I know his last name's Washington, but very bright guy, and I think he understands the Black Hebrew roots movement that Kanye West seems to have fallen into. And what was I talking about before I swerved off into that one? Does anybody remember? It's always funny. Somebody says, well, you need to talk about this. Well, I talked about that on Sunday. I will tell them when they tell me this. You should talk about this. Well, I talked about that last Sunday. And then I say, after I send that a response to them, I say, I think, and then I'll go check because I don't even remember, from week to week what I talk about. So it's not fair for me to remember anything. But does anybody remember what I was talking about before I swerved off on Trump? Oh, yeah, DeSantis. But, and I need to be careful about what I say because I was meeting people from all over. People had knowledge of the Kurdish regions. People had knowledge of the Ukraine-Russia war. And so I want to be very careful about talking to them or saying anything about our discussion that would identify them. So I did have dinner with a few guys, and one of them was this is Wednesday night in Jerusalem. He is a pastor from a country that's in a war right now with Russia. This was an incredible conversation. We talked about the 2014 revolution in their country, Russian infiltration into the church, the Russian-backed disappearance of evangelical Christians in that country. Putin is evil. Now, I'm a fan of the Ukrainian government and that type of thing, okay? There's a tremendous amount of corruption there. But conservative media in this country is not telling the entire truth. And there are people that I love to listen to and I follow. I'm just saying there's a lot more there. This pastor told us about the missiles coming in over the head of where they live and hitting a base nearby at the early parts of the war. 3 or 4 hours of power a day right now. It's in the under 0 Celsius in this country. But he said, as the men have gone off to war, it is the most incredible opportunity to share the gospel. And with their families when the men don't come back. Thousands dead. But he debunked a lot of the Russian propaganda machine that they're doing okay. Russia's doing okay. He said Russia has lost 100,000 soldiers, not including mercenaries. They brought in mercenaries from Ethiopia, Libya, Sudan, Syria, other countries, and they have been killed like crazy. He said what happens is when that happens, Russia makes it look like these were Ukrainians that were killed. So listen, I'm telling you what he said. He said, when those missiles are coming over your head, your prayers are more powerful than ever. So, and so I peppered him with questions for at least 2 hours. Tell me about this. Tell me about this. What's the impact had? Why is Zelensky going after the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? And here, I'll tell you what he said. They've been infiltrated with Russian plants. There have been ethnic Russian areas that have received some of the worst bombing from Russia. And then they say, well, see, those were Ukrainian soldiers, or whatever. And I asked him about the Nazis. He said it's a problem, but it's not as big as it's made out to be. And And some of the things I said, well, this is what conservative media in the U.S. is saying. He was like, where are they getting this? So there's a tremendous amount of propaganda going on both sides of this issue. So pray that we have discernment so we can figure out what's going on. The United States has now sent more money to Ukraine than we have, I think, sent to Israel in the entire history of Israel since 1948, in less than one year. And there's no accountability. But according to this pastor, this has helped that military fight Russia. But it's very bad. Russia is systematically destroying the utility infrastructure in Ukraine. It will be a very bad winter. Speaking of bad winters, talked to some new friends from the UK. It seemed like we knew a bunch of people in common. We just had never met. And these are people who love Israel. They've done films and videos and news things about Israel. But so I asked the one man, I said, what's the power situation? What's going on with energy in the UK? And he said, well, prices are up 4 to 5 times, even with government controls. And I talked to my wife, and she was sitting there in the house with like 2 sweatshirts, a sweater, an overcoat, and a parka and gloves and a hat on in the living room to keep warm, because we've had to turn things down. And so with a cold snap, I'm not trying to be a prophet. I pray for mild weather this winter, but I think we're entering a pretty difficult period. The energy situation has not been resolved. There were people there from other European countries, Denmark, Norway, Germany, and think, well, we got our gas storage filled up, but nobody knows what's going to happen. And the U.S. stepping in is coming at a cost of about 4 times the amount that it was when it was coming from Russia. Russia still seems to be struggling with supplying its troops in Ukraine. The road on that bridge that was destroyed by, I think, Ukrainian special forces a few months ago, the bridge between Russia and Crimea, has opened, but the railway bridge is still shut down. It was an incredible operation as this truck is coming along, and here comes a train going the same direction that's loaded with fuel tankers of fuel. And the explosion occurred at this one point right as the train gets alongside, and that's what caused the damage to at least one part of the rail. It's a double rail there on the bridge. It was an incredible operation. They were either very, very lucky or very, very good. I'm leaning to the fact that they were very, very, very good. They knew that train was coming, and that the train had fuel, and they knew about how fast it traveled. They had planned this operation for months. There's still a lot of unrest in the eastern regions, and the Russian claims are that this is ethnic Russian, and we're only protecting ethnic Russians. To which I have been informed that's, there were some ethnic Russians there, but Russia moved people in there, just like they've moved thousands and thousands of people into Crimea to make it look like it's Russian. But now Crimea they may shut the water off to Crimea, which is a dry area historically. The rail and road bridge there are critical to its supply. Everything is a real mess over there, and you need to pray for the people over there. But believers have suffered leading up to this war, and I think that continues. So that was interesting. Thursday night, let me play this video here, if I can find it. Here, this is the headline that I picked up from one of the newspapers. Millions are in frigid dark in Ukraine. Russia's massing maybe 300,000 soldiers on the border coming in. But there's a report this morning in the New York Times, and I know people don't like the New York Times, but they're finding among Russian soldiers, for example, they will find Russian soldiers who have printed off instructions from a Google search how to operate the weapon that they're carrying. They are not prepared. And they need the Lord as much as anybody. But, they're cannon fodder. So there's people talking about Putin's dying. Putin's got a coup happening. I don't know about this. All I know is the situation is very volatile. Russia is threatening to use nuclear weapons. They put up a video of them loading this giant intercontinental ballistic nuclear war missile. It has an incredibly powerful warhead. They've directly threatened London. I don't know what's going to happen. I believe that Jesus did tell us that in the end times, in Matthew chapter 24, that there would be wars, and rumors of wars. I have to say, I think we're there. I mean, everywhere you look around the world. I know people that are down in Brazil right now as protests have continued down there about the thing that, you have to be careful because of the censors, about the thing that happened when they went someplace to choose someone to run the country. The left has taken it over. People are having their bank accounts shut off. I read this morning, Sam Brownback, former senator, has a conservative action organization. People donate to that. He went to J.P. Morgan, and he was I think he had some money there, and he wanted to open another account, and they said, no, we don't want you. This is happening. This is how the left, big corporation, this is fascism. They're doing the bidding of governments. So here's a video, and this will relate to my dinner conversation on Wednesday night with Seth Frantzman of the Jerusalem Post. And there's no sound to this. I didn't think there was sound to this. Hang on. This is a Turkish interior minister saying, I swear to God, if Damascus, Baghdad, Erbil, Yemen, Lebanon, Libya, Afghanistan, and Pakistan would be liberated from the repression of Americas and Europe, if a peace would come to these lands, it will be up to this Turkish nation to accomplish these. How many times have we talked about Ezekiel 38 and 39 said, you need to watch Turkey? I remember my conversation with Chuck Missler at dinner about 2008. I said, are you excited about this? Watch Turkey, John. Watch Turkey. We are no longer the same old Turkey. It's the first time we've had an opportunity in 300 years since the beginning of Ottoman Empire's decline. It is the first time we've caught the West without leaders and without a vision. For the first time, we caught the West, who is supposed to make centennial pans, shivering and trembling in cold and winter. This is the view of Erdogan of Turkey. When the food crisis erupted, did the Western leaders not come begging to Erdogan to open the grain corridor from Ukraine? They were knocking on Erdogan's door, on Turkey's door, so they could benefit from energy. Remember the plans to make energy a transit point for energy, gas. So understand this is happening right now. So as I talked to Seth and Jonathan Spire is a tremendous war correspondent, consultant, security expert. He wrote a book on Syria called After the Fall. He was raised in London. He made Aliyah to Israel. And it's interesting. And Seth was raised in Maine and Massachusetts and made Aliyah to Israel. They all serve in the IDF. When they get there, and they come because they believe in Israel. They believe that the historical place for the Jewish people is in the land of Israel. And this is prophetic. This is like one of the biggest indicators. So as I talk to Seth, and I'm going to put this back up here, just so you can have, this is the interior minister from Turkey. So we talked about what's going on in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, all of these things. They've been up into areas of Iraq and Syria and Turkey, sometimes at great risk to their lives. Some of the things that, for example, Jonathan has done is like, you're crazy, man. I mean, so we had dinner. By the way, Seth has written a book on drones, which is a very big deal right now. He wrote a book. I think I actually reviewed it someplace, called After ISIS. And my review was this. It was talking about what happened with ISIS in Syria and Iraq. I said, this book reads like the worst horror story you've ever read in your life. And it only gets worse when you realize this is just a good journalist reporting on the facts of what happened. So here's the lawyer's sidebar note for the evening. Seth made the greatest comment of the evening. You know, I've been thinking about this, and there was a guy at the conference, Israeli business startup guy, incredible information. For example, they're like, Israel should have like one unicorn. These are people that help funding up business and stuff, and they call them unicorns because they sort of fulfill a fantasy and they really don't exist. So Israel, based on its population of the world, it should have like maybe one unicorn. How many do you think they have? 100. I forget the percentage. I waiting for the government press office to put up the video of this talk. It was incredible, the statistics that he was citing about the fact that the startup businesses in Israel are just off the charts compared to almost every other country in the world combined. And it's a country of, 9 million people. And it's interesting because you run into people in Israel, because it's like the population, probably less population than Ohio. I don't know what our population is now, but let's say they're similar. So I'm walking through the Jewish quarter of the Old City the other night, and there's a social media guy named Avi Abelo. I recommend that you follow him. The Pulse of Israel, I think, is one of his podcasts. And so here he comes filming a video, social media video up. So I turned around and followed him. And I mean, he's walking really fast. He's video talking articulately, walking faster than I can walk. So he turned around and started coming back. So I followed him again. I finally caught him in the Menorah Square there, took a picture with him, told him how much I respected him. But you run into people like this all over Israel. I mean, like people you know, or people who know people that you know. It's very unusual. So back to Seth. Seth made the best comment, and it was based in part on what the guy said at this startup talk that he gave. And this guy said, we do invest in green energy. I mean, he's totally bought the line. I just spoke at the Financial Innovation Institute down in Saudi Arabia, the Davos of the desert. And I've talked about that because this is where Saudi Arabia is pushing ESG. So people don't produce oil. They have to buy it from Saudi Arabia. And it makes the price go up. Saudi Arabia does this. Here's another sidebar. They're building NEOM, the line. There's satellite drone videos of this that grow day by day. It's a massive construction project. They're starting foundational work in some places. This is significant. Netanyahu's coming into office. He said, I'm going to make peace with Saudi Arabia. He said this in numerous interviews. By the way, if I sat down to edit all this stuff, I haven't been here for 2 weeks, and I'm telling you, I've got enough for a year that I've got to get to. But he's talking about green energy, this business guy, can't remember his name. And, by the way, Pam always yells at me, I have these golf shoes, and they're black, but they're white on the bottom. These are like the most comfortable shoes that I have. And when I was on Fox that day, I wore them. And she's like, texting me like, did you wear those shoes and those low socks and you're on national TV? And I'm like, yeah. You know what I told her? I said, you know what people see when they look at me? And I know what she's thinking. Look at that slob. And I'm thinking, no, the people are looking at it and they're saying, there is a confident man in charge of his life. Nobody's telling him how to dress. So, if anybody has an extra room, may need it when we get home. So, but this guy wore they wear suits with like tennis shoes, which is like really great. It's another reason to love Israel. But he's talking about plant-based meat, lab-grown meat. He's also talking about the development of chips. This is important. And he used the same language, the exact same language, in his talk. And this sets off alarm bells in my mind that Neuralink had made when they made their video about Neuralink. Now, there's a Gates Soros company that's competing with Neuralink. They've got something and they're going into FDA trials, but their technology is way behind what Neuralink is coming up with. I mean, their connections, like a couple hundred connections, Neuralink is like 38,000 or something. You need to understand, so we can all celebrate Elon Musk taking over Twitter and some of the things he's exposing, but understand there's a really dark side there that we need to be concerned about, this brain implant thing. And when Neuralink organized, and again, this is subject for everything I talk about today, I could do a 2-hour talk on. They said something because we know that when the Antichrist comes, he will be a great imitator of the real Christ. And so when Neuralink puts out their video, and you can see the cut down version, it's about 25 minutes, they use this progression. And they use these words, and this guy used part of these words in his talk at the media summit. The lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear. Now, does that ring a bell with you? John the Baptist sent his disciples to Jesus. John was in prison. And, John is a cousin, I think, of Jesus, if you do the genealogies right. And the question was, are you the one that we're looking for, or should we look for another? And what was Jesus' response to them? You go back and you tell John, the lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear. Now, that's not all that Jesus said, but you understand now that there are a company out there and business people out there whose driving thing is we're going to create something that the lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear. This is very significant. So talking about plant-based meat, so at the dinner, Seth goes, well, if we have plant-based meat, why can't we have meat-based plants? And I thought, this is like one of the most brilliant. So, like that apple tree over there, that's really a tree of steaks. So go over there and get your steak. Looks like an apple, but it's a steak. I thought, I'm on board with that. So, but we talked about geopolitics, and one of the things we talked about in geopolitics related to Turkey was that Turkey's tension with Syria. Now it looks like they're trying to get a peace with Syria brokered by Russia. So then Russia will look good. And then Russia will come to Turkey, and Turkey will help them with some other problem in Chechnya or Azerbaijan. And Turkey will look good. There's like a synergy between Russia and Turkey there that I think has big prophetic significance. But there is this rise of Turkey, even though their economy's in the toilet, they just seem to be getting by with it. It's almost like somebody else is helping them. And it's significant. So I'll talk more about that conversation in the future. I'm certainly going to do a midweek this week. Midweek meaning, by Friday or something. So don't get your hopes up. But I may just turn on the camera and sit down and start talking. I like to do graphics, but I just haven't had time. Speak on energy side, this is kind of big news this week about fusion. The Livermore Laboratories came up with something, we were able to produce heat. But, and so everybody said, we're going to have fusion, energy is going to be cheap. But as one commentator I heard said that, don't go putting fusion lamps on your shopping list yet. There's a lot more to do because there's a few other steps. One is right now there's an element of the equation to generate power with this that they haven't really mastered yet. But this is a huge breakthrough. This is 70 years in the making. Do you understand what's happened in the last 70 years? It's just a little over 70 years ago, Israel became a nation. Fusion now is being talked about, but there's an element there. And then the plants have to be huge. A fusion plant to power the city of New York would have to be the size of Albany, New York, land-wise. And then you have to have transmission lines. And so because of the size of the plants have to be so big, you're going to have plants and you're going to need hundreds of miles of transmission lines. So it's still a bit of a pipe dream, but it's an incredible breakthrough that it's only part of the whole acceleration convergence thing that we talk about a lot. And then what would you think if they actually came out with something like this? What would happen geopolitically to the oil and gas producers in the world? I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But we talked at that dinner about demographics. Israel is growing. Now, part of that, the concern geopolitically is that it's in the Orthodox community, many of whom don't even believe in Israel. They don't want to serve in the army. They have tons of kids, and they just want the state to support them to study Torah, and they don't want to study math or science. And so it's a big political issue, and this is part of the parties that are aligning with Netanyahu to form the government. So we were at the Knesset on Wednesday. That day we had the dinner with Seth and Jonathan. And the Knesset that was elected in the last election 4 weeks ago, they're sitting, they're considering legislation. They're having meetings, they're doing legislation. Some of it may help Netanyahu. And the same things are going on in our country. I know there are people in Israel that disagree with me. The weaponization of the legal system, the justice system against people that they don't like. It's happening in Israel, it's happening here. There's a parallel there. It's happening in that country down south where they had the thing where people went to a place to do something, to choose someone who would be their leader, that type of thing. It's happening everywhere. So hold the fusion hype. This is an article this week in this excellent article by Philip Hamburger. What a name. Phil Hamburger. Man. He's a law professor, and we love law professors and people who went to law school around here. At least some of us do. But this is an excellent article. It was in Wednesday's Wall Street Journal. Is social media censorship a crime? And he says that what they've done with Twitter, and by the way, we've only scratched the surface on this. Twitter and working with the tech companies and the FBI. And by the way, why is the CIA still trying to hide the release of files regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy? Because it's the CIA. But this professor, he's at Columbia in New York, says we should have social media censorship a crime because it's attacking our civil rights. It's a conspiracy to deny us our civil rights, our right to freedom of speech. It's a brilliant article. I won't go into it. You need to go watch it. At the same time that's going on, we remember I was pretty early adopter of playing videos here of Event 201 that talked about a certain thing with Charlie Vector and how to deal with a Charlie Vector type thing going through the culture, the world, and how health department officials should respond and control the media and what was said, that sort of thing. And how did that, by the way, Event 201, how did that work out? Did it appear that Event 201 was a predictor of what was going to happen? Now, look, I'm all for people planning for bad things happening. So, like, I'm sure if I went out to the airport, I would find that The fire trucks that came out to meet us on the runway last night, they practice those things because they know that it may happen. And they don't know if it's going to happen in Columbus or Nashville or any place else, but they were ready last night in Columbus. They were all there. By the time we stop, there's flashing lights all around us. And I'm glad for that. But also understand that there are people who are willing to take a bad situation and twist it into something to their advantage. So back in October, this is just sort of hitting now, the Center for Health Security at Johns Hopkins University and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation held another pandemic training exercise. And here's the video for that. Here's the video.
Officials in 2 Latin American countries alerted the WHO of several outbreaks of a new infectious disease that's mysteriously appearing across the region. Severe Epidemic Enterovirus Respiratory Syndrome 2025. Over the past 6 weeks alone, there have been 500 confirmed or suspected cases reported. The virus could cause a severe pandemic if early containment and mitigation efforts are not successful.
The pandemic in this type of situation and trend would be a risk for the global health security.
Pandemics are inherently political, financial, and so much broader.
We have not spoken on the leadership in country. And I think that we need to be also very careful. We cannot decide a lot of things without the leaders be involved.
Catastrophic contagion.
There is no substitute for national leadership.
It's important to support the local response or the national response.
Training those that are in these areas first, enabling them with the tools, protecting them, and if needs be, regional solidarity first.
At this stage, communication is key, and communication should include not just scientists with data, but also social, religious, and political leaders.
Trust. This is an essential issue, and trust was broken among countries, between populations and healthcare systems, between healthcare systems and governments.
I'm very sorry to say that in 2025, we need to strengthen the health system.
WHO needs to be a voice for the voiceless.
No one is safe until all of us are safe.
As of today, there have been an estimated 1 billion cases worldwide, with more than 20 million deaths, including nearly 15 million children. Countless millions are alive but left with paralysis or brain damage. The most successful countries are those which invested in preparedness and trained for this moment years in advance. This included having full-time pandemic preparedness and response teams, which conducted detailed operational planning and routinely tested those plans through exercises and drills. If more countries had participated and heeded the guidance, the toll might have been much less.
So, now, then the question becomes, so we want them to plan if there's, and we know Bible prophecy that there's something coming like this, but we also know if we forgot what happened like over the last 3 years, 2 years, and now they're talking about something even worse. What are they going to do with this one? What are they going to do when they have this happen and central bank digital currencies, where they can just shut you off and essentially put you under house arrest? And so the World Economic Forum thinks this is a country, this is New Zealand, and this is, here, I need to put the, let's see. Well, I don't see it here, so I'll forget about it. Never mind. So there's a brochure that was put out, things to know, and they're talking about, this is New Zealand government, and this person, Jacinda Ardern, is World Economic Forum Leadership Summit. She's the one who said last year, a little over a year ago, we will be your sole source of truth and information. It was more, I think if George Orwell watched the things that are going, he would say, I didn't even expect that to happen in my wildest fantasies. And so they have this brochure out, Things You Need to Know. It's called The Scale of Extremism, Understanding the Motivations Behind what? Violent Political Extremism. And so here they, for example, they have this scale here, and it's politically motivated, violent, extreme, and it's one of these Venn diagrams to show how everything overlooks. They have these sections on how we develop these indicators, what we need to look for, and then they have this chart, unusual behavior, mindset, and ideology. And a lot of it is based on people who don't do what the government wants them to do are going to get thrown into this category. The indicators of violent, extreme mindset and ideology, security awareness, unusual changes in behavior. And then they have this thing here. It says, if you see the signs, contact us, contact the government. Now, who made up this anachronism for the name of the government agency? Huh? In this world today, who does that? You want my opinion? People who are that. People who don't think that happened. It's amazing. We have the development of AI. This is a club in London, I believe. I think this is a hologram. Watch this. Said, well, it sounds not real great, to live forever and beyond. So you have all this stuff with Marvel and Captain America and the transhumanism and transgender stuff that's going on there. You can change into something that you're not. We've had a whole world that's been educated by this. In fact, I don't have a graphic for it. It's on my. By the way, in Israel, everybody uses WhatsApp, and it's. So here's an article. Hang on. So this comes from grid.news. Came out yesterday. Politics. This is a political issue. A mass exodus from Christianity is underway in America. Here's why. It's less about hot button topics like abortion and gay marriage, and more about the Cold War and the internet. And they're saying, Christianity. People leaving by 2021, 42% of young adults compared with 29% of all adults weren't religiously affiliated. We talked about this at dinner the other night. You got to protect your kids from this stuff. This is the move towards secularism. These are just some of the sections in this article. The move towards secularism happened incredibly fast in the U.S. Yeah, you know what? It's like the flaps aren't working anymore. And let me tell you, from personal experience, when the flaps aren't working, it's not a very comfortable ride on the plane when you're coming in for a landing. It's a little bit unnerving. In 2018, millennials at 35% represented the largest share of non-religious adults, and it's growing. It's growing much more quickly than we want to admit that it's happening. The rise of secular rather than religious cult figures after COVID. The rise of secular rather than religious cult figures. This is research that it only confirms what all of us who are paying attention and thinking about are realizing. So, what's this? ChatGPT. Have you heard about this thing? It's AI that you can it downloaded 1 million users in a week. It's like unheard of in apps. It's AI based. You talk to it, and reporters are running around saying it writes essays and articles based on what you talk to it about. It may replace us. And even journals are saying we may become the useless eaters that Noah Yuval Harari, they don't make that connection, but I will, talk about. And what are you going to do with people when they have no value to society? Do you think they might expand the MAID laws like they have in place in Canada and a bunch of other countries? You know what MAID stands for? Medical Assistance in Dying. Do your part for humanity. It sounds like, what was that one movie where everybody had to, Soylent Green, and also Logan's Run, where they had to die, they had to transform or something before they were 30. And Logan ran because he thought it wasn't a good thing. And he was a guy who chased people down. ChatGPT, look it up. There's hundreds and hundreds of articles out there. Daily Mail. This one came from the New York Times last Sunday. It's today. What would Plato think about ChatGPT? AI can be a learning tool for schools with enough resources to learn it well. Just go ahead and use it. It's okay. And by the way, parents, you don't need to worry. We're helping your kids with their sexual identities. It's going to work great. This is that article. I should send this to Seth Frantzman. It's time to say, put down that burger. Yeah, well, it's time to say, make that plant make steak. Amen, right? Can I get an amen to that? So here's the media conference, and here I am sitting back here. So I was there. I attended the meetings. Bride and I went down to Hebron. I'll post about it. This is an ancient staircase in Hebron. Probably one of the most ancient staircases ever found. It would lead up to the city gate. Of course, it's in a neighborhood now. There's apartments, homes, and they call them caravans. I think they're mobile homes, manufactured housing like we would call here. But this staircase is one of the oldest staircases, if not the oldest staircase of antiquity that's been uncovered by archaeologists. These are the excavations at Tel Rumedia or Tel Hebron. And those stairs are about 4,500 years old. When Abraham came to settle in Hebron, they were already 800 years old. So factor that in. Oh, here's that article. This is that thing that I was going to talk about from Know the Signs, a guide for identifying signs of violent extremism. So one of the things I did, and I'll talk more about Hebron. I've talked about it more. I went to the Western Wall tunnels. They have this tour of so here we see the Western Wall, but underneath all those houses and things, there's tunnels, and they've excavated these over the last 10, 20 years. The tours are just, what you can see down there is unbelievable. And I think it completely demolishes any idea that the Temple Mount was to be a Roman army encampment, as some people claim, and the temple was someplace else. I respect you if you hold that opinion. I have no respect for the opinion. Okay. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, because you go down there, and I'm just telling you, governments don't build army installations like this. And the Romans never did this. By the way, if this is a Roman installation, This is some of the archways and stuff that they've excavated down there. This is a couple stories under what you see at the existing Western Wall Plaza there, and the Western Wall. Some people call it the Wailing Wall. I don't think they like that term. What's this? It's a mikvah. What's a mikvah? It's a ritual bath that you use in religion. Jewish religion. You bathe before you go to the temple. It's symbolic. And I personally believe that our ritual of baptism is somewhat tied to this. But I'd have to research it. So they have this incredible graphics of what this Temple Mount looked like back then, and they talked about the destruction of the temple. And that debris, by the way, was pushed to the east towards the Kidron Valley, by and large. But they've discovered a lot of this debris along the walls. And Jesus said the temple would be destroyed. He didn't say the whole Temple Mount would be destroyed. And this is the area. So this is a couple levels below what you see today. This is it's called the Great Bridge Tour, the bridge that led up to the Temple Mount. And then they put Roman temples up there after the Temple Mount was destroyed. This is where you also see that kind of synagogue that's there. Some people have claimed, this is under the Temple Mount. It's not. It's under the Western Wall tunnels. It's in the Western Wall tunnels. I was there. I know where I was. This is to show this is the Herodian stone down there. What does it look like? It looks like the stones of the Western Wall. It was built by King Herod. It's part of the plaza. Much more to say that about. By the way, this is, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what this is. It's a pomegranate of some kind. The priest wore gold, I think they were like gold pomegranates along the high priest, along gold pomegranates along the hem of the bottom of his robe. And where we were down in the city of David. So if you look here to the Temple Mount and you go to the left, you see that going downhill there. I walked down that this week. You have no idea how steep that is. You get down there at the beginning of the city of David excavations and you look up towards the Temple Mount, you can barely see the Dome of the Rock. It's so steep. I also learned that when you put your thing in an app, you're going to walk someplace in Jerusalem, and you get a thing that says, it'll say mostly flat. That means it's pretty smooth. It doesn't mean it's not up or down. It just means there's not rocks to climb over. It's not like climbing a mountainside where there's loose rocks and everything. So mostly flat means smooth, not flat like we would think of flat in our church here. So we went down to here's a picture from the entrance to the city. Do you see what I'm saying? As you're looking up, that's the southern wall of the Temple Mount. And it's incredible. And by the way, you see all the steps there? We walked down into this valley and then, hey, let's walk down here. And then, let's go up to the Jaffa Gate. It's like a 80-story building after dinner. Okay? So I was working hard. And I learned in Jerusalem, if you got a lot of down, wherever you're going, it's going to be a lot of up. So here's some excavations. This is an interesting part. They have places near the royal palace area where David would have had his palace. You can see the burn layer from the destruction by the Babylonians in 586. And, the Matthew genealogy tells us that it was, 14 generations from Abraham to David, and then 14 generations from David to the destruction of the temple, and then 14 more till Joseph and Mary. But there's an interesting thing here that he told us about that tells us a lot about, it's a pipe that comes out. It's right there. Here, I blew it up. Okay? So what was that? And this is how archaeologists work. So they think in layers. If you build here over and over again, it must be a very important site. And this is unusual, is a a sewer pipe from a toilet. And as they were excavating this, they found what comes through a sewer pipe, preserved. So they took it to the lab and analyzed it. Now, I don't know if there's sewer residue analyzed. I don't know if it's advertised, but apparently they have them. And they analyzed, okay, because you analyze that, you can tell, well, what did people eat? And what they found here was around this time that this is a wealthy family. They're eating like grass. Why? Because the city's under siege. And so you take that one clue and you can build this huge narrative from it. We then went from there down to the processional road. I could talk hours about this. This is looking up towards the Temple Mount. These flagstones. And our guide says, and I can't remember the guy's name. I'll play a video of him in just a moment. This guy was fantastic. This guy has like Mr. Documentary subject written all over him when he talks. Very articulate, intelligent, knows it, passionate, loves Israel, loves Jerusalem. And if he doesn't tell us, I'm going to play about a 6-minute clip of his. And I hope the sound is okay. I was trying out a different thing with my phone camera. So the question is, did he walk on these? He said, I know what you're thinking. You're asking, did he walk here? And there's a place along here where there's like steps, but they don't go anywhere. And so what was that? It was like a pulpit. This road, every year, people came to Jerusalem. All these other cultures, you go there, you find temple here, temple here, temple here, temple here. In Israel, one temple, one God. And millions of people would come to Jerusalem a number of times each year for these festivals. Millions. I want to say something about this. You go to the Jewish quarter, and you sit, it's one of my favorite places to sit because the Jewish quarter is so alive. It's relatively new because it had been destroyed by the Jordanians. So it's been rebuilt since the 67 war, including a huge synagogue there. And that's where they have the menorah now. It's called Menorah Square. They've moved it around a little bit, but I think it's going to be there until they put it in another temple if they build it. But I walked through the streets, the old, there's walls, and I see these like 3 and 4 year old kids, like brother and sister, holding hands, walking along together, and there's no adults around. And I think there's a verse, I think it might be Zechariah 8:5. I think it says that in the end, this is what Jerusalem is going to be like. The children playing. And you see they're running around playing in the Menorah Square. But this goes from the Pool Siloam about 700-800 meters up, and this is pretty steep. It doesn't really depict it very well. This is the processional road that they've uncovered. Not really open to the public yet. If you sort of know somebody or the government invites you there, you can get there. They hope to open it within the next 18 months to 2 years, but it might take a little bit longer. But understand, this is this convergence thing. There's going to be another temple. They want to open this road for millions of visitors and pilgrims. At the time, they want to build another temple, but there was another temple coming too. After that, is it a totally new temple or is it a renovation, like Herod's was a renovation of the second temple? Is the Millennial Temple a renovation of the temple that will be built? I don't know. I hope I'm alive to find out. But do you understand the pattern of prophecy? The road that Jesus would have used from the Pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount has been uncovered in Jerusalem around the time that they want to open it up, and they're talking about building another temple. Do you grasp the significance of what's going on here? So here's our guide, and I apologize, I cannot remember his name. As I'm getting older, names fail me sometimes. And good old what's-her-name and I talk about this at home a lot. Here's what he had to say. We found there's a place where they have a little dome with orange lights, and it's a coin embedded in the road. By the way, they found a high priest golden thing, pomegranate, from the robe in the drainage channel underneath this. What happened? Well, was he running and escaping the Romans, or was it he just walking up and one of them fell off and rolled down into the drainage channel? But they found it along here. They found coins. You can see where the shops are. So here's our guide talking about this. Brian, you may want to turn the sound up on this a little bit. Here we go.
The flow of Jerusalem completely. This is the experience. This is where everyone comes first. You walk up here, you do your song of ascents, and you make your way to the side of the temple. And that's it. And that's what we want to do. So does everyone notice here? Everyone can see where we're standing here. You see that there's glass here, and it goes down. Okay? Yeah. So in the course of this excavation here, they found that the stones, these big flagstones, were broken. Okay, so they find the first one. And you think to yourself, okay, they're old, right? They got broken along the way. Start digging out the next one, they find another one.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I need to clean up that audio, so let me tell you what he said. So in the prior picture, you see the flagstones here. They're sort of nice and smooth. But in this area where he's talking about this,
it's not.
The flagstone's broken up. They uncover it. They found a piece, all this smooth, and here it's broken. And then the piece beside it, and it's broken in the middle. What happened? Well, and he used the term the year 70. They prefer 70 Common Era, or the year 70 as opposed to 70 AD. So he said the year 70. Jerusalem's under siege. The Romans are coming. 2,000 Jews hid in the drainage channel under here, and Roman soldiers came and they broke up the flagstone and went down and slaughtered those Jews. I believe, and I may have my facts incorrect, so we'll talk to the Department of Corrections about this week here at FBC. They found a coin there, minted by the rebels. And why weren't they building weapons? He said because they thought they would continue in the land. And the coin says, for the freedom of Zion. 2,000 Jews slaughtered there. And as this man said, this is where they wanted to either defend or escape to Masada. We know what happened there in 73. In 70, he said, this is where Jerusalem ended. And a few years ago, my father, who was born in Europe and was shuttled through 11 concentration camps as a boy during the war, he now lives in Jerusalem. We came here together. He wanted to go down into the drainage channel because I wanted to feel the fear that they felt, to remind me of the fear that I felt as a Jewish boy in Europe. But he said, now I can stand here with my son. So we walk down instead of up, but they sing the Song of Ascents, the Psalms of Ascent that you can read today as they're going up to worship. And there's a giant mikveh down at the end.
So these were the steps that would have gone down, depending on your height, age, you know.
This is the pool
stood
Siloam.
up there. People that wanted to swim a little bit more come down, or went all the way down into there. So, and behind you, when you guys leave, you can see that the water source is still there. Okay, it's still flowing as it did thousands of years ago. People ask me all the time, are we going to fill the pool up? Dig the whole thing out? And I tell everyone, I say, between the Jews that want to do mikvah and the Christians that want to do baptism, we have to fundraise for a lifeguard full time here. So we have to take it up with the management. You know, we'll see. So this pool, so we're just seeing right here, is just one corner.
So that pool was the size of 2 Olympic-sized pools. And by the way, the spring that's there, there's like not another spring around for like 50 miles. And they built a city there, and millions of people would come. So they would bring water in from heaven. There's giant cisterns under the Temple Mount. These people were incredible. So after we were there, and they want to open this to the world at this time. So here's a picture of some Hugh Kitson and Jack Vandertang and his wife from The Hague. And yeah, I wore my golf shoes to the Knesset, Pam. And look, Hugh wore tennis shoes, by the way. So he's my kind of guy. So there was a number of speeches there. They had a lady who used to be in the Likud. She left the Likud. She's big in the LGBT community, won all kinds of awards. She and her partner had just had twins, Sharon Haskell. And she gave a very great speech. I want to play part of a speech. I'm going to go over just a little bit because one of the guys who's very controversial, I have really 2 topics to talk about. And so it's going to take about 15 or 20 minutes. Ben-Gvir, he's head of the National Religious Zionist Party. He's been an activist. He's made statements in the past that he wants to expel Arabs, and he's made some statements that are negative towards Christians, particularly Jews who become Christians. And he's been a flashpoint in this election. So we went to the Knesset, and this is a working Knesset now. They're passing legislation. They have not formed a government, but the Knesset is meeting. I know it's kind of hard. It's like we have a Congress, but no president. Okay, that's sort of similar. So I'm going to try to fast forward through this to get to, this is Sharon Haskell. This lady here, she is Russian Jewish descent. And you see there's Orthodox Jews here from different parties, religious Zionism. Katiana Marzowski, I think is her name. She's with Lapid's party. I think she might be the number 2 person in that party. And it was interesting. They all gave speeches, and they were very good speeches. Sharon Haskell here. This was let me just play a little bit of this.
In general, so we need to do much more. The problems usually comes during the times of the Ramadan, when there's a lot of incitement of young Muslims in the mosques in those areas.
Okay, so what she was talking about, this was kind of a slam at Ben-Gvir, who's not in the room yet, who's coming to speak to us, this controversial figure. And some of the people, and it's just saying there's a lot of incitement. We don't need to have an incitement. So there's this narrative developing. And in fact, in today's, and I will do this on my midweek, in today's New York Times, Thomas Friedman, and there's an editorial by the editorial board about, can Israel survive this government, essentially is what they're saying. Because, they're conservatives, they love Israel, it's the narrative. They're painting everybody that disagrees with them as extremists. Does this sound familiar as to what's been going on here and going on everywhere? This is happening all over because it's working. So, but you can find this at Government Press Office on their YouTube channel. Click under the live link. By the way, YouTube changed the way they organize things. It used to be videos, and it would include all your live videos and your recorded videos. Now they have the live stream ones are under the live tab. So if I do a weekly one, it doesn't show up on the videos page. It shows up under the live page. So I have to download it, upload it again to put it into the videos page. And it's very confusing and people don't understand. So there's little things there. There's like home, videos, live, that type of thing. And I think you can organize your page to include all the videos at one time. So by the way, this is the head of the Government Press Office. And again, I don't remember his name. Over here to the left in the white kippah is Ben-Gvir. He's a lawyer. We love that around here. And he's represented some people that aren't so great. Sitting next to him is Yishai Fleischer. Yishai is a friend, an incredible man. We don't agree on things. By the way, he went to law school too. And we were invited over to his house Friday night for Shabbat dinner. Well, let's listen to Ben Gvir because he's the official. Yishai is the official spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron. Incredibly articulate. You may have seen him in some video clips that I've played before here about Hebron. He is the go-to guy in Hebron. Yishai means Jesse. Who was Jesse? David's father. Oh, by the way, when you go up to the Tel at Tel Media at Tel Hebron, and I didn't realize we were right there by it, because we were walking around places, PM, that we didn't walk around. And by the way, when we were in Hebron, there's soldiers all over the place. And the soldiers are like this, so if this is where the trigger is, they're like this with their weapons. And we got weapons pointed at us a couple times that day. And they're all over the Tel, the ancient Tel. I did a video, it's on my Facebook page. I'll upload it to YouTube, just about some of the things there at Tel Media overlooking the tomb of the patriarchs. But they were ready to go. There's armored Israeli defense vehicles all over the place. And I don't know what was going on. Yishai said it was just, this is what we have to do on Shabbat. There are 1,000 Jews that live in Hebron among 200,000 or 300,000 Arabs, which has a very high percentage of jihadis. When we went to Mamre, where Abraham got the promise that he would have a son, God met with Abram at the great oaks of Mamre, and you can see where they grew in the bedrock today. Herod built there, Constantine built there, important site. Joel Kramer has a number of videos, people recording Joel Kramer there. Look them up. These are some of the most incredible explanation of archaeology videos you will ever see. But Yishai said, yeah, this is kind of how it is on Shabbat. So Wednesday he was there, and then we got to go over to his house Wednesday night. And so he does the interpretation for Ben Gvir. So So what I want to say is that I don't know if they edited this out or not. So Ben Gvir is in the room, and this is what happened. All these brave members of the Knesset, I'm sorry, I have to go to a committee meeting now. We're considering some very important messaging. I'm helping form the new government. I'm very busy. And they all got up and left. And it was a sign. It was typical politics. So here's a little bit of the speech of Ben Gvir. I found him to be a charismatic guy. And I won't play it to the end, but he has this, I think self-deprecating humor is very effective. And he's sort of like, my wife says I need to do more around the house. And I told her I'll be home for Shabbat. I'll help turn the lights on before Shabbat happens. And so here's a little bit. This is Yishai Fleischer speaking the English.
שלום אביחי, מצטער שהאנגלית שלי לא ברמה של לדבר בצפיפות ולכן אני אדבר בעברית ויתרגם אותי כאן. I'm sorry that my English is not for fast speaking, but I'll be translating for you today. ואני באתי להגיד לכם מה אנחנו בעצם רוצים לעשות כאן.
Okay, so somebody it's online have said that I said that my father and I are Jews. We're not. We love Israel. I guess you would put us in the Zionist camp, but we're not Jews, okay? Did I say that? Okay. So people online, I would just encourage you to listen a little closer. So listen, I'm not going to play this because we're running short of time. And for some reason, the audio is not working that well. I don't know why things are distorted today.
I'm not sure that worked.
Yeah, this is a live video that some people
Patreon.
Recorded.
You can find a link. It's going to be to find common ground. That's really the goal.
So Yishai, great guy, great father, And I just want to put up this video because we went to Shabbat at the Fleischers, and this is his wife, Malka, tremendous lady. They met in law school. So we're sitting there with, 5 adults at dinner, and 3 of us are lawyers. I mean, isn't that just like almost heaven, really? So here's an interview, a debate, you can find it online, that she did with Ariel Gold, who is a Jew-hating Israeli, a self-hating Jew. So I'm going to play a little bit of Malka. Behind her, you see she's using a green screen. We talked a little bit about that at dinner. And because I use this picture, a black and white picture of the Tomb of the Patriarchs, and the day we were there, the sky was that blue. It was, I took a picture once. I wanted sky that blue, and I photoshopped it in. So here's a few minutes of Malka, who's talking about their life in Israel, and she goes right at this. She, her, she got to use her pronouns. So here's Malka speaking about she and Yishai's life in Israel.
Well, we're going to have an after party in Discord for the IOs, but I kind of get...
In the rolling hills of Judea, the first person in my family for 2,000 years who's been able to sit securely in the land of Israel. But today I'm really here to represent the 600,000 Jews of Judea, Samaria, and Eastern Jerusalem. Incidentally, approximately the same number of people, of Jews who were living in the whole land of Israel when we declared our independence in 1948. And I'm here to stand up to our opponents, to the people who want to destroy us, once again, to declare our full and unquestionable rights to the land of Israel. For myself, ever since I made Aliyah, I've had the profound and kind of unusual merit to live only in biblical cities. I've lived from the north in Samaria to Jerusalem, and now I live in Judea. We started our life in Israel together, me and my husband Ishai, who is the spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron. But we started our life off together in Beit El. For those of you who are history or Bible buffs, you will remember that Beit El is the place where Jacob had his dream of angels going up and down a ladder. He had been running away from his brother Esav, a liar who wanted to kill him for his birthright, the birthright
Esau,
which was rightfully Jacob's, that Esav was going to steal. And Ishai and I, we lived in Beit El for 7 years. I gave birth to my first child there. We lived in a caravan. We had a dog. We had a cool little car. I had a little garden. And I started there, my life in Israel, to understand the promise that God gave to Jacob. And I want to read to you the promise that God gave to Jacob in that dream that he had in Beit El. Just shortly, it says, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land upon which you are lying, to you I will give it, and to your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall burst forth westward and eastward and northward and southward. And through you shall be blessed all the families of the earth, and through your seed. And behold, I am with you, and I will guard you wherever you go, and I will restore you to this land. For I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken concerning you. I still get choked up when I read that. So after Beit El, because I feel that we are really living it today, that we are living that miracle. After Beit El, we moved to the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, which is an incredible community of very amazing, strong Jews. And there we lived adjacent to the Mount of Olives Cemetery, which is the oldest Jewish cemetery in the entire world. It's 3,000 years old, and some of Israel's most esteemed people are buried on the Mount of Olives. We merited to live in an apartment which was right across from Mount Moriah. So we lived on the Mount of Olives, but we lived right across from Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount. And there we got to really get a sense of the magnetism of that place, not just for Jewish people, but also for non-Jewish lovers of Israel, and also for non-Jewish non-lovers of Israel. It's really the spiritual epicenter of the entire world. There, we also got to know a little bit more. We lived very, very closely, very close space, I guess, with Arabs in Eastern Jerusalem. The community we lived in is in the Ras Al Amud neighborhood. And we really got to get a sense more of the Arab street, what people are dealing with from their own leadership, what people are dealing with vis-a-vis Israel, and what prospects for peace between Arabs and Jews really looks like. But now, for the last 3 years, Isha and I and our family of now, Baruch Hashem, 3 children, have been living in Judea. And I feel that in a sense, we've really completed a cycle where we've really traveled the road kind of our ancestors and rooted ourselves in this place that our ancestors have fought for and Jews throughout the centuries have prayed for and yearned for and dreamed of. And now we're here doing it. But you should know that with all the things that I said, and a lot of you know me from my activism on social media and from the radio show I do with Yishai, the Yishai Fleischer Israel podcast. A lot of you know me for activism, but the truth is I'm just a regular person. And, you know, I live in a regular family in a regular community. I like to make gourmet popcorn. I've been dabbling in peanut butter popcorn recently. And we're really just a regular people who just want to live a simple, good life. And it's our right to do that. It's our right to do that in this land. We are indigenous to this land. We definitely earned the right through our blood, sweat, and tears, through Babylonians, Romans, Crusaders, Mamluks, Turks, the Brits, and sidelined, of course, by the Germans. And we have a lot of haters against us. But we never fully left this land. And those of us who managed to hang on with their claws to this land did it for the rest of us who were exiled unjustly from our land. And now we're all back together again through what I perceive to be great miracles and what anyone can perceive to be incredible hard work and determination on the part of the Jewish people. And we're learning to be a people again on our land. I just want to say, you know, the Jewish people, we have a right to the land of Israel. We're rebuilding our third commonwealth. We're learning about Jewish laws pertaining to the land. You know, some of our Torah laws several of our Torah laws are directly tied into the land and our mitzvot, which are commandments that we can't do outside the land of Israel. And I just want to finish up really with one beautiful quote that really kind of, I feel like, encapsulates what the state of Israel is today. It's actually by Charles Krauthammer, not by a big rabbi, but I think it's beautiful. He says, Israel is the very embodiment of Jewish continuity. It is the only nation on earth that inhabits the same land, bears the same name, speaks the same language, and worships the same God that it did 3,000 years ago. You dig the soil and you find pottery from Davidic times, coins from Bar Kokhba, and 2,000-year-old scrolls written in a script remarkably like the one that today advertises ice cream at the corner candy store. So in conclusion, yes, I believe that the might of God has brought us back to the land of Israel, and the incredible fortitude of the Jewish people and the yearning of the Jewish people has brought us back. My friends and I here in Judea, Samaria, Eastern Jerusalem, and really throughout the state of Israel are prepared to continue to shine our light out into the world and not disappoint all the people out there who really see our return to the land of Israel as a great miracle, as a great inspiration, as a great opportunity to enjoy prosperity in this region and all around the world.
Okay, so how do you think dinner was with her? By the way, she can cook. They're Orthodox. Okay, and, you know, they know what we believe. Okay. I don't know. The sense I had was that there's somehow coming a great reconciliation. Now, I think I know how that works out. They think it's coming too, but we disagree on how it works out. Okay? But if you've never been to Shabbat in an Orthodox home, as we were leaving, I had to use the restroom. We're on our way to the airport. And they said, this is how Orthodox they are. Please don't turn out the light, because then the bathroom will be dark until sunset tomorrow. And there are no windows in there, so that was a big deal. it was a very moving, unique, extraordinary experience. They have 3 children, a girl 15, 2 boys. I think they're 9 or 10 and 7. Incredibly engaging kids. They have lawyers for parents. I mean, she's a mother now. She doesn't work outside the home, really. She's an activist, and she supports the family. But the Shabbat is very interesting. Let me just tell you what happens. So at the beginning of Shabbat, there's some prayers, and I'm probably got the order all mixed up. I was trying to make mental notes of what was going on. But very early on, first Yishai, Abba, as the children call him, and Malka, they, starting with the father, they go around and speak a blessing over each kid. And then hug and kiss them. And then Malka did the same thing. And then the children in Yishai spoke a blessing over Malka. Thank you for making a wonderful home, based on, guess what passage in the Bible? Proverbs 31. I said, I'm familiar with this passage. I married one of these people. And then you have a meal, there's bread, and then the story, the portion of the Torah for the reading this week was the story of Joseph being sold by his brothers. And I have to tell you, these kids engaged with the text of Scripture unlike any kids of that age that I have ever met in my life, ever. And it's very humbling that we don't do very well. So as they read the story, the kids would say something like, well, it seems like, Rabbi so-and-so at school said that this guy was okay, but I really think this guy not speaking up about what his brother's doing was kind of a wimp and a weakling, and he should have said something, and he went along with them. And then, they argue about it, and it was very engaging. I mean, it was an incredible thing to watch. But it was also very humbling that we could do a lot better as Christians with our scriptures that we also consider to be holy scriptures. So incredible meal, and just a great evening, one that I will always remember and hope to go back. So Yishai Fleischer, Y-I-S-H-A-I, Fleischer, Fleischer.com. I think he has a website, and you can see some of the things I'm teaching. And understand, he's Orthodox, so there are going to be things we don't agree with. And there's other Orthodox groups that they don't agree with. But, it's very unique. If you've not done this, you're missing out. So you can find an Orthodox family around here and go to Shabbat. Just don't get, some crazy left-wing person like this, Ariel Gold. So go look this up. This video was recorded about a year ago. It's up on YouTube. And just let me say, having watched it, Malka wipes the floor with Ariel. She's a tremendous woman, and the other one is not, in my opinion. She does not understand the concept of Israel. And so this is, but you heard what she said. This is the promise was made we would come back to our land. And it was said to Jacob at Bethel. Remember, I talked about Bethel a couple weeks ago. I think in my last sermon or the sermon before that. We went over that because it's a significant place. And she lived there in a caravan. And as she said, had a little garden. Incredible people. And the country is full of them. And so if the government press office sent us there to get us more supportive of Israel, it's not a perfect country. I get that. But they're there. And there's things coming that we need to prepare them for, and be prepared to help them through. That's my opinion. That's what I think the scriptures say. So I'll do midweek. I'll fill in some more things. I'll re-edit Ben Gavir's speech so it's a little more. Yishai's interpretation of it is better. And I have much, much more. We went down to Gaza. I'll finish with this. We went down to Gaza. Went to an IDF installation there. We went to the urban warfare training thing that they have there. I'm guessing it's 20 kilometers from the Gaza fence. It's a mock-up of Gaza. They have a tunnel. I didn't go down in the tunnel because I kind of looked down there and I thought, I didn't want there to be an operation to get me out of the tunnel. It was pretty tight down there for me. And so I just said, you can tell me about it to my skinny friends. And then we stood there. I put a video of this on my Facebook page. They said, hey, the general says, would you like to see a tank in operation? So he gets in his Jeep and he drives up to the tank, and we're standing there, and the people there are going, stand in the line here, get in the line, stand here in the line. And I said to the people, I sometimes give my opinion, I said, you've all now had your first training session to be a member of the Israeli Defense Force. You've been told to stand in the line and do nothing for 15 minutes. And he came down through the sand with the tank, and as he got close to us, he whipped it in a curve and I had got like a tidal wave. I was picking sand out of my ears 2 days later. My clothes were covered. We met with a lady there and other people in the kibbutz there. And she calls it, this is 95% heaven, 5% hell. When the rockets come where we live, and this kibbutz was right, like we stood less than 2 kilometers from the border. She says, we have 10 seconds to get to a safe room. And they talked about a couple guys who died, a guy who lost his legs in an attack about 8 years ago. He's the mayor of the area down there. He spoke to us at dinner that night. Incredible people. When we went up to Eshkol, which is a little bit further away from the border, they said, well, we're 99% heaven because we have 15 seconds. And then in Efrat with the Fleischers, they were saying, well, we have a minute and a half. I mean, this is a great place. You really get a sense of what going on. So anyway, it only increased my love for the nation, but it also increased my concern about, what I understand is coming. But there are people that are passionate, like this guy at the city of David said, now I can stand here. My father says, now I can stand here in Jerusalem with my son after all this. And he lived it. Incredible. So let's pray. Lord, thanks so much for your word. We pray that you'll use this to encourage us, help us to get into studying the scriptures of Bible prophecy so that we can understand and make sense of the insane things that go on in a world that, as I said at the beginning, has no flaps. There's no brakes on many things. But we know that this is a time for us to be prepared like never before. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.